Ibrowse Catholic Club and the Karnataka Goan Association. Some bark, some bite. An enigmatic and riveting book by Dr. Marianne de Nazareth, who incidentally is both a member of the Catholic Club and of the Karnataka Goan Association. And therefore, it is a matter of pride that we have such an illustrious author in our midst today. And we are here now to listen to her thoughts and ideas and behind the scenes, or in this case, behind the words, her emotions and feelings that all of us who are present here today are fortunate to be privy to. Marianne is a prolific writer, and in her own words, writing is her first love. I'm sure Gregory, her husband, and Steve, her son, who are present here today would say, not your first love. We are your first loves. Writing is your second love. Am I right, Marianne? In recent years, she has changed her focus to environmental and science journalism with a strong emphasis on conservation, species loss, and gender issues. Writing has always been a part of her. In her earlier days, she was the sub-editor and then the chief editor in Deccan Herald. Later, she became an adjunct faculty at St. Joseph's Postgraduate College of Media Studies, Mount Carmel College, Jyoti Nivas College, and even St. Joseph's Boys High School. Marianne received her doctorate in journalism from the Madurai University. Presently, she is a freelance journalist writing on a variety of environmental and gender issues. She has been a recipient of many All India awards. In 2015, she won the Best Print Journalism All India Award and received an amount of 50,000 from the German government. Give her a big hand. The following year, 2016, she won the Ladli Media Award for the Best All India Print Journalism for Gender Sensitivity. Marianne has written 4 children's books and 3 novels. We look forward eagerly to the next book, which I understand is in the pipeline. So, ladies and gentlemen, despite this inclement and dull weather, all of you are present here today, and you all definitely must be lovers of the written word. So sit back to enjoy this lively and animated discussion with the moderator, our past president of the Goan Association, Iona Mishkita, and Dr. Marianne de Nazareth. It is going to be a wonderful and animated and lively evening. We request all of you who've read the book, please ask Marianne questions and keep the momentum going. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adele. I'd like to request Lizanne Arya to introduce the moderator.
Hello, everyone. Iona Mosquita has a master's in economics and has been a market research and media professional. She's a full-time mom to 3 teens and a voracious reader. Having chosen economics over literature, and when she And when she was a student, she is now making up for it. Iona was also the past president of the KGA.
Welcome, Marianne, and it gives me such pleasure to be here today because I remember being at Marianne's very first book club session initiated by her. Book club, Ibrowse was her baby, above the pool when the library was above the pool all those years ago. And we had such beautiful sessions there, and it's so nice to see that life has come full circle as I moderate her 7th book. Yeah, so yeah, it's lovely to be here, Marianne. So for a start, let us warm up by going through your writing. Can you tell us very briefly about each of your 7 books? Just the title and maybe a line about it.
Actually, I first started writing, my first book was Above the Rice Fields of Pilen. And I was not keen on doing a book. I mean, I'm a journalist. Who want to write a book? So then it was my dad who said, no, you've got to write about Goa. You've got to write about our village in Goa. And so that's why the first book came out, and it's all about my little village in Goa called Pilen, and a house which my dad now has infected me and my husband to go there every, 4 months we go there to maintain the house. It's a lovely little village, and so this whole story is about the village. And my publishers were so nice. They agreed to publish my book when I was in Goa. So I just sent them photographs of the house, and they got the illustrations done, and they're illustrations of the church and the fields in the book. So that was my first book, and that's how I started. But that book took me 10 years to write. 10 years, because like you, with the little ones, I had my little ones.
And then we have a couple of kids' books.
Yes. Then I was working with the Deccan Herald and Open Sesame. If any of you all remember Open Sesame, it was the kiddies section. And Daksha Hati was the editor, and she said, Marianne, come on, I'm sure you can write some kiddie books. And that's where I wrote The One-Eyed Ogre. Do you have a copy there, Steve? I wrote The One-Eyed Ogre and then a whole lot of stories, which were all published in the Deccan Herald. And then I asked the editor of...
I have The One-Eyed Ogre.
Thank you. It's completely sold out. And I got an illustrator in the Deccan Herald to illustrate all these stories. And I had to request the Deccan Herald to allow me to publish the stories because they had the rights over every story. But the editors of the Deccan Herald are great guys, and they straight away said, they're old boys of St. Joseph's as well. And so then they said, of course, just go ahead. So that was my first kiddie book.
Okay, so 3 kiddie books and 4 books for adults.
Yeah, the other 2 I wrote for my granddaughters for Christmas. So one was for Elena and one was for Natalie. So Elena lives in the US. It's called Andrea and the Dandelions. Her mom and dad said no using her name. So I said, fine. I said Andrea. And when Elena got the book, she said, Grandma, why did you not use my name? It's for me. So that was the Andrea and the Dandelions. And the Ketchup Monster was for Natalie because she loves ketchup. So these were their Christmas books. And then when I go down to see the kids, these little girls worry me for stories about their dads. Tell us about daddy. Tell me all the bad things he did so when he shouts, I can tell him. And so I put them all together in a book for them, and they love it. So those are my 4 kiddie books. Yes.
Which of your 7 books is your favorite and why?
That was a sucker punch, Iona. Actually, I love the last one which I've written. And it was David who was talking to me a few hours ago. Lives in London. He said, Ma, I really enjoyed it. I sat and read it at one go. I don't know, did any of y'all do the same?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did as well.
So that's what David said. He said to me, he said, I mean, it just flowed out of me. I wrote it in a month, less than a month. That one took 10 years, like I told you, but this one took a month. And this one is all about Parkinson's and my parents and stuff. And this one took about a month and a half.
Okay, so let's come to Some Bark, Some Bite now. Would you situate us with respect to the book? Just give us a brief idea of what's in it and without any spoilers. Yeah.
Okay, so no spoilers. My publishers put it under the genre of a thriller, which I guess you could say that, yes, it's a thriller. And it's a story about a woman named Gabriella who was faced with a problem and how she helped herself. That's all I'd like to say, because it's nice for you all to read and see. I have had a lot of people tell me it's a very helpful book, because she was faced with a situation which people like her, just a normal citizen, does not face. So she was able to, of course, had a lot of help from old friends. And so the book is really a kind of a go-to if in case something like that should hit anybody, any of us in the room could be faced with it. And Gabriella was faced with it quite unexpectedly.
How did you conceive of this novel? How does the idea for your books come to you? Maybe not just this one, but generally. Is it inspiration that strikes suddenly, or is it a thought that grows? I'm sure many of us are budding writers out here, and it will help us. Do you get up in the middle of the night and have to
Yes.
pen something down? How does it work for you?
Yeah, before we would have these big mosquito nets. Now, of course, we don't, but we would have it. And I'd be, kind of trying to get out of that mosquito net because I had this idea in my head and I wanted to put it down. Yes, I know it happens. And I tend to kind of live my books a bit. But like many authors, if there are any here in the room, you kind of blend characters. And like my sister says, it's a little unnerving because we don't know where we're going to come in. Yes. So I get my inspiration from all over and even from my work. So you'll see my environmental work come out in most of my books.
Yes, I think Some Bark, Some Bite has a lot of descriptors about Bangalore. And I think the lovely part about it is it's set within 5 kilometers of where we are right now. So it's very familiar for a lot of us to read it, and you feel really nice, and it's very refreshing to read about your own city in such a positive manner and beautifully put. Yeah. So generally, when you're writing, do you string together incidents, or does it flow from start to finish? What is your method?
Well, over time, like I told you, the first one was really hit and miss. And I had to really think. And like I said, it took me 10 years to get back and forth and back and forth. But now, because I'm writing constantly, I mean, that's my job. I have to write every day. And I need to write every day. So then what I do, and I have perfected it now, is to be able to work a table of contents first. I do that. I mean, it's a bit weird, but it works for me. So I decide how my chapters are going to be. And then maybe while I'm writing, I might split one chapter into two. So instead of having 25 chapters, I may just go into 27 or 26. I could just split it up that way. That's the way I work now with the contents, because I find that kind of gets me to focus on what I want to, write and how the storyline has to go.
What was your biggest challenge while you were writing Some Bark, Some Bite? Which portion? What parts of it?
There wasn't a challenge, sadly, It was just that I had to be a bit cautious about publishing it. Because if you read it, it's a lot of negativity towards the police. There is, not completely, but there is the section in the beginning which had an issue where Gabriella ran up against the police. So she was, that was something that I had to worry about. So even though I wrote it in, say, 1.5 months, it was on my desktop for 2 years. Wow. Because, I spoke to lawyer friends. I sent the manuscript and they said it would be safer to wait. And, let things kind of mellow down and then you can think of publishing. But the story and the book was just came out so easily for me. It's just that the difficulty was waiting. And those 2 years for me was a long time. Of course, COVID was there. Yeah. But yeah.
Okay. So Marianne has selected a few passages to read out. So let's hear one of them now. Page 31, 32. This is from a chapter entitled The Joys of Community Living. I first want to draw your attention to the chapter heading, a very tongue-in-cheek heading when you know what the book is. Marianne, can you tell us why you chose this particular heading here?
Well, like I just said, she's a blend of 3-4 people together. It's not just one person. Usually that's what authors do. It doesn't have to be just one person. And I've learned that over time, that I remember with my first book, my mother looked at the book and she said, but that's not the way it happened, And I had to explain to her, this is a novel. I'm writing a story. It doesn't have to happen exactly like that. So I take pieces from here and there and put it together. It doesn't have to be just one person.
So let's talk about the title of this chapter, The Joys of Community Living.
Wicked girl. So all of us know what it's like living in an apartment block, right? So it's really that. It was the joys of community living, tongue in cheek. Because if you read the chapter, it's really not that joyful, you wicked girl.
Okay, so now Marianne will read for us the passage she has selected.
Oh, I have. Which one was it? Let me put on my reading. Okay. So this is tells you about the new specs. Shout at Alfie. So okay, so this chapter tells you all about the fact is why Gabriella has this fear of dogs. Okay. So as a child, there was always been a dog or two in Gabriella's life. Her parents were confirmed dog lovers, even though they were fairly strict about pets inside the house, like others of their generation, and had got comfortable kennels built for the dogs outside. Sadly, one of the pets had contracted rabies from eating chicken bones dropped by bats from the trees when Gabriella was about 10 years old. And that had been the start of a painful experience which had left deep scars on her psyche. The dog had turned aggressive and had bitten her baby brother on the face. The vet had wanted to play it safe, so all of them had been taken to Johnson Market. So in those days, that was where we got our shots. So that dates me, right? The municipal clinic for injections in the tummy. Gabriella still shuddered at the memory of the thick needle and the lumps that would rise at the injected spot. Hot water bottles to help soothe the pain had hardly helped, and their traumatized cries still rang in her ears. After that incident, the way she looked at dogs changed forever. There was no hate or loathing involved, just an overwhelming fear of being bitten and the threat of having to take those rabies injections again. So that's basically why y'all would find Gabriella, who is the protagonist in the book, a bit nervous about dogs.
Moving on to the next one, page 40, 140, 140 to 141.
Yeah. Okay, this is a pretty special one for me. I love doing it because it really happened in college. This is in St. Joseph's College, near Double Road. Okay. So this happens every single year in St. Joseph's. So if you all are bird lovers, that's the place to go to. Later in the day, done with her classes, she passed the huge ficus tree in the quadrangle of the college. The tree that had stood for maybe hundreds of years before the building came up. Today, it held a mass of twittering rosy starlings. Pastor roseus, that's the Latin name. A migrant bird which usually winters in India and tropical Asia. They were highly gregarious birds, and the entire tree was covered with a large, noisy flock, feasting on the ripe orange ficus fruits, which covered the enormous tree. A large mass of students thronged the balconies and were taking pictures of the birds with their camera phones. Several of them came up to Gabriella to ask why and from where the birds had descended. The huge horde of twittering and bobbing birds with their unusually pretty pink feathers were a lovely sight, but quite mystifying too for many students. "What kind of bird are they, ma'am?" asked one student, coming up with a perplexed look on her face. "They are foreigners with no visas," said Gabriella with a laugh. "Only us humans have boundaries and need to apply for expensive visas to go to another country. These birds have traveled a huge distance from Eastern Europe to winter in our balmy Bangalore. After winter gets over, they will fly back that massive distance to their original home," she explained. "They don't need passports. They don't have to go through immigration and security checks. They don't even have to ask the principal if they can eat the ficus fruits on her property," she said, and both of them laughed at the thought. So it's a true thing. Those masses of birds come to St. Joseph's every single year, and there'll be hundreds of them on the tree. And I've written ad nauseum about them, but it's such a wonderful experience to see them and for our young students to be standing around. And I do media studies. They just loved it and they wanted to know more. So that's the chance, I got to be able to teach them as to what these birds were all about.
There's a line that I would like to read out now and ask you about it. "Life's got claws, and you need to know how to blunt those claws," her cousin in Kuwait had told her once. "Don't you dare give up." Well, those claws were well and truly in her. She'd been hit where it hurts, on the premises of her own home, and now it was the courts which would rule the matter, trivial or not. How do you include these gems? Life's got claws. Do you take down these things people say and use them in your books sometime, or is it when you're writing? How does it work with you?
No, I don't really write it down. But this is a cousin of mine who's based in, where is she? In Abu Dhabi, I think. And she is working with an advertising agency, and she comes out with these all the time. When she speaks, it's part of her lingo. So I
So
write
do you
down.
quote her a lot then in your books?
Well, yeah, the humorous parts and the very, the ones which really fit into certain parts of my writing.
I love that bit. It sounded so good, and it was apt for that quote.
Very apt. And the way, she put it, I like the way she comes out with certain things. I even put in Stephen Hawking's, if you saw. Yeah. So there are, I like certain things which, I don't look at those inspirational quotes which come with your good morning every day. No, thanks. The WhatsApp good mornings. No. But yes, I do look for certain things which help.
Another passage that I really liked, and I thought it's amazing how Marianne actually observes daily life and simple things like chai and litter, and it makes a beautiful paragraph of it. So I'm just going to read this out for you. Walking towards AirAsia, she had to sidestep a group of men standing around a small tea shop. How we love our chai, she thought, looking at the eager crowd standing around savoring their masala chai. The best part was the prices had skyrocketed from rupees 5 to 10 for a tiny cup, yet all the office goers were happy to partake of their daily brew. The pavement was scruffy and littered with discarded paper cups which were lying around, despite the old and large blue plastic container kept on one side to serve as a bin. Sadly, the plants which had been carefully put down in the soil to beautify the new tender shore pavements had been trampled upon by the careless chai drinkers.
Yeah.
So this is not a question, just my appreciation for her observation, her powers of observation, and how she is translating that into the written word.
The thing is, being an environment journalist, that's the whole problem, because I notice things a lot, especially if you read about the the unsegregated waste. Those are the kind of things which keep coming out in my writing. And I felt sad because that tender shore pavement had just been planted, beautiful plants, and nobody cares. They just walk all over it. But there are certain roads where people have started taking over now and looking after them. Like if you look at St. Mark's Road, or you look at our road, Hayes Road, or you look at Residency Road, the shops in front or the hotels in front have taken over. And people who are in charge there see that they are watered. So if we want a beautiful, and I always say that, if you want a beautiful city, you got to pull your own weight and try. So yes.
So before I hand over the mic for the question and answer session, one last question. Through this book, what is the message you'd like to give your readers?
Through this book, it's very clear. There was this one passage which I liked writing, was about boxing, if you remember, and about boxers. Okay. Now, if you watch a boxing match, these guys are hammering the daylights out of one another. And yet, even if you're hit, that other boxer is wiped and he's made to get up and just fight again. And that's what I keep saying. There are so many times in life that we are really hammered out of shape. We don't know where to turn. Your back is against the wall. What are you going to do? And from this book, I want to say that there is always hope. You can always find a way out. You don't have to give up. There is a way out of any situation. It is difficult, I agree. Like for example, at the moment, Iona, I have a very close friend, part of our book club, who's battling cancer. Okay? She is not giving up. She is fighting it tooth and nail. She's in terrible pain. And that's what I'm trying to put across through this book, that we don't give up. It's so easy to give up. It's so easy to say, it doesn't matter, you know, look the other way. But there are times in life that you can't look the other way. And what Gabriella faced would have been impossible if she had given up. So that is the only message I would like to convey in this book, that you don't give up.
Maybe it would be appropriate to read that bit, page 141, because you've written it so beautifully. It's the last bit you selected, page 141.
Okay, so she's going to see this criminal lawyer, and he says, sure, come and see me in my chambers in Gandhinagar by 5 p.m. tomorrow evening. I should be back from court by then, and I will ask a junior colleague to give you my address, he said. She had been slammed to the ground again, but she was clear about one thing. No matter how many times one got pushed down, what mattered was how quickly one was able to rise again. That's what she admired when watching boxing matches. The speed at which the boxer who was slammed against the ropes bounced back. Nose bleeding, a cut over the eye, yet nothing held him back. And he got right back into the fight. And that seemed to be the right metaphor for Gabriella right now. Bloody, but unbowed.
So with that, I thanks so much, Marianne. It's been
Thank
lovely
you,
talking to you.
I know.
Yeah.
I loved it.
And I pass the mic on now for questions to the audience. Vinita will handle this part.
I call upon Tessa to come and conduct the question answer sessions.
Anyone has any questions?
Hi, Marianne.
Hi.
I'm Adele.
Hi, Adele.
I started the book thinking that I was reading a piece of fiction. But some sixth sense told me that this raw emotion, this absolute detail of every situation and every incident was something more than just a bit of fiction or just a story or part of her imagination, of a writer's imagination. And then when the ending confirmed it, I think on the second last page, I realized that it was your story. Now, I have two questions for you. One is, are there any parts in the book, in the story, which you have added as your license as a writer? Little incidents, little stories to make your book more readable, more interesting, more thing? Or have you just stuck to facts right through? All those incidences with the police, with the trauma you were going through, all of that, okay? And my second question to you is, this person, political, or what did you call it, diplomatic immunity be, excuse my language, be damned, does she get away with no retribution at all for the harassment and the trauma she put you through? Don't you at some time think she should have got some kind of punishment for putting me through hell?
You put me on the mat. You put me on the mat. Said, no smiling there. My brain is thinking fast. Now, uh, you have to remember, Adele, when you write a story, even when I do my pieces for the papers or for the magazines, you have to always start with something that draws your reader in. So that's how I started, and there's a lot of imagination here and there. Yes, a lot of me has come into the book in the sense of my jogging out there and meeting the sweepers and whatever, I brought into the book. But I cannot say that it is my story. And there's a lot of fiction put into every chapter. But like I said, the part which is about the birds in the college, that's for sure. So most writers will pick out of their lives and will put it into their story. And like I said, pick from whatever they have experienced, as part of their lives. Now, to answer your second question, diplomatic immunity is complete. They cannot be touched 100%. Stay away. That is something you can do nothing about. They are absolutely clear. So even if a counter case is produced, they can still walk away and they can hold you in contempt, and that's a huge problem. They are completely covered by this, the fact that the consulates, all consulates have immunity. So Gabriella was unlucky to have an egotistical person, but I'm not blanket banning all consulates, okay? You have very simple, humble people as well. But here, this was a completely different person. And plus, she was being encouraged to do whatever she did by others. So that was, but you cannot. Let's just face it. All of us over here sitting in this room have to realize that they have the power and nobody can touch them. And as soon as a complaint is made with the police, whether you go to the police station and you try to make a complaint, they're not going to file an FIR immediately, never. But here in this case, yes, even if it's done on the phone. So I hope I've answered both your questions.
Hi, Marianne.
Hi, Said.
Yeah, actually, I tend to follow up of what Adele said when she said that how come the lady got away scot-free. I feel that in reality, Gabriella got some kind of closure because the case was overturned and dismissed. But from the point of view of the reader, I think the reader would probably be looking for a little more closure. And if it is not totally true to reality, do you think you could have built in something to offer the reader more complete closure by not necessarily out of an act of vengeance, but just that something, she just left the country and she seemed to have got away scot-free. So as a reader, and I've read your book, I felt that as a reader, I would like a little more closure without being vengeful.
I know there've been many of my readers. I know I got this phone call from Jason, who's a fantastic cordon bleu chef. And he said, where does she live? I'm just going to go and kill her. Said, that's what he said. Where does she live? And I said, she lives in Germany now, you know. So as far as closure is concerned, I think my editor felt that the way I had done it and just leaving things hanging made a bigger impact on the reader than, you know, pulling all the threads together. Because you start with, you know, a premise, and then how you draw all the threads together to finish the shawl or whatever you're knitting. So it's the same way she felt as a thriller. If it was to be a thriller, it had to be just left hanging. And I think it served me well, because I've had very angry people calling up, you know, and saying, why couldn't Gabriella have done something more? And so I felt happy that the book has affected people so much, which is good for a writer. It's important. You know, you don't want someone coming and patting your back and saying, very nice. I want, you know, emotion. And I've got that from all my readers, which is really a happy feeling. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing in to what Said has said. I noticed that it must have been very traumatic for Gabriella, from classroom to courtroom, huh? Quite a journey, and many people have that kind of experience and can identify with that. So what I'm trying to ask you is, despite the odds, Gabriella manages to maintain and have that degree of equanimity. How? At least one or two things that you can think of, because, you know, this is a common experience and people are left bitter, full of resentment and anger, but Gabriella seems so equable from start to finish. You know, even her documentation and everything is done with a level head. I admired her for that. And there must have been something which kept the balance. What do you think it was?
Sue, I think when a writer is writing, you are, you know, you kind of look at it from above once the whole thing is through and she's decided this is my manuscript. So it cannot be a vicious tale, okay? Because when it becomes vicious, then there is no respect left, right? And that's not really your final goal. Your final goal is, yes, Gabriella did get closure when it came to Said, when it came to the High Court ruling. It was like, just swish, and it was closed, which gave her a lot of self-satisfaction that you have judiciary who are honest enough to see the truth. Okay, so there is a touch and go element in the book, but as an author, I felt it was important to keep the tone, you know, something which the reader didn't get disgusted with, and which the reader kind of felt there was that need to support Gabriella. That was the main thing. It's very difficult, yes, I agree, but it's important to remember that. And you also have to remember, and it's a very, very big point with my editor, we have hundreds of people in Bangalore who are very, very fond of dogs. Huge numbers, me included. I mean, we grew up with dogs. But it's to a different level. They talk about themselves being pet parents. So you have to be very careful when you write. Even writing for the newspaper, you cannot denigrate having strays on the road and stuff like that. The newspaper will immediately, be called up, and you'll have a whole lot of people screaming and wanting to know why and stuff like that. So you have to be a little cautious with your tone, and that is what I kept. It was mainly the tone about the dogs. Okay, and some bark, some bite tells you that. Did I answer? Thank you.
Yeah, hi, good evening, Marianne.
Hi, Susan.
My question is, when you wrote the book, did the plot come to you first, or did the character, Gabrielle, come to you first? And if so, why? Which was more important? Thank you.
So, like I said, Susan, the character is an amalgamation of 3 and 4 people. 3 and 4 people came into Gabriella. Okay. And what your question was, did you think of the protagonist first, or did you think of the entire the storyline? Yes, an author has to think of the storyline. It's like some of the kids in my college will start, and like you two must be facing, they will start a dissertation, okay? They will start the dissertation with great gung-ho, and then they can't finish it because they don't have the literature to review it. And they don't know what, and they're doing surveys of like 6 people. It's a failure immediately. I mean, no lecturer, like you know, will tolerate it. So you have to look at the whole flow of the entire story before you even start writing it, because otherwise it won't work. It just won't work.
Hi, Marianne. Shamla here.
Hi, hi.
Hi. Firstly, thank you so much for the book.
Welcome.
Like, you know, I gifted it to a friend who was leaving Bangalore,
Yeah.
leaving with such beautiful, fond memories. And the first thing she said was, this book is like a complete cycle of her life in Bangalore, because she lived in the central
area.
district. So she's going to, of course, write to you and thank you for that. So it's a beautiful book of memories for people who have not been able to continue living here. So thank you for that. The 2 other points which you've touched upon now. One is was there a backlash from the police for writing this book and from the pet parents? I'm clubbing the 2 because in the book, they've come across pretty viciously. And I know, being a pet parent myself, how any incident like this is always shushed and, you know, not spoken about. In fact, when I asked if I could share my review of your book in the pet group, it was not really encouraged. So have you had a backlash from the pet parents as well as the police?
Okay, so let me answer your first point. Now, the point you brought out was that I spoke about the whole of the CBD area. Now, when I first started writing, I changed names because I thought there was no need to show where the whole story was being written from. But my editor said, why? Just write it. You've been to Moinville Road, write about Moinville Road, or you've been to Eagle Street, or you've been to St. Mark's Road. Why not? I mean, it'll connect with so many people, and I'm glad she told me that, because that's how I kept it. And that's how Bangalore has, you know, been such a, my entire story is around Bangalore. To answer your second question, I had Priya Chetty Rajgopal, who is a very big person to do with dogs and stuff, tell me that, you know, Marianne, you've written this so beautifully, and I hope pet parents read it and realize that they just cannot hog the whole area, and they have to be conscious of people who may be scared of dogs. Now, Gabriella was diabetic, so she was scared because she didn't want dogs which were not on a leash to jump on her. Okay, now I'm giving out all the spoilers possible. It's so sad, but then that's part of it. And I have not had any negatives, not a single one, because as Sue said, the tone was kept general. And like Priya said, it is something that happens and pet parents have to know they cannot cross the line. So there is a line which they cannot cross. And it's not fair to the other people who are not fond of animals, right? Do I have a few minutes to give you an example? In our building, we had this couple who were coming to take over the Ritz-Carlton, okay? And this couple came, they went around, they loved the apartment, they were all set to sign and they were ready to take on the apartment. When I said, no, you can't go unless you see the terrace. And the husband said, yes, Marianne's been saying, let's go see the terrace. So we went up to the terrace and two dogs which were not leashed came charging. I was so shocked to see her respond. She sat on the floor like, you know, a little child, and she just cried and screamed and vomited. I had never seen anything like that. And the husband got so furious. He said, I am going to the police. I'm making a police complaint. And I had to beg him. I said, no, I'm so sorry. This person who's not leashed the dogs, I will explain. It's one of the owners in the building. I will explain. Needless to say, they never took the apartment. Needless to say. But why am I relating this story? I think people have to understand that not everybody takes to dogs. And Gabriella has said in a very straightforward way that her baby brother had been bitten on his face. So this lady, later on when I spoke to the husband, he explained that as a child, she had a very bad experience with dogs. In Egypt, they were from Egypt. And, you know, all her hair was standing up on, and she was crying and screaming. She was incoherent. And I think that was really a shocker for me to see. And I've been very clear about the dogs in our building, which have to be on a leash, because I don't care if you're the owner or whatever, but there are other people who are scared. So I hope that answers you. Pet parents, yes, you're a pet parent, but you have to consider others.
Thank you. I call upon Adele to come and give the memento. You want to ask a question? So sorry.
I actually had two questions. The first one is, what is your usual process of writing? Do you just write randomly, or do you dedicate a couple of hours every day to do your writing? And my second question would be, what is that one advice that you would like to give any budding writer that may be present in this room?
Yes, I do dedicate a certain number of hours to my writing. The family are aware of it. I'm there with my laptop and I have to write every single day. It didn't come naturally to me. I used to go to the US to edit a writer's book there. His books were on military history. And he was the one who taught me you have to have discipline. All writers have to be disciplined. So he would write from 2 to 7 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning to 7 when it's totally quiet. And then I would come down later at about 8 o'clock or 7:30 and edit whatever he had on the computer. So that's where I learned from Tom Bates that you have to be disciplined. or you can't get it out. And your second question is, what do I just randomly? No, I just said I work with a table of contents. So I do have the storyline in my mind, and I work out the chapters, and then I flesh out the whole thing. I work the headline, and that's how it comes about. And how would I advise young writers? Yes, I do it all the time in college. There are different genres. You have to decide which genre you want to write. So today the kids in college write on something called magic, all magical stuff, okay? Which is really not my scene, but that's what sells. So it just depends on what your interests are, okay? Love stories are cliche. Most of them, nobody wants to really read them anymore. It's like we grew up with Georgette, and I mean, we grew up with Barbara Cartland, and mom always talked about Georgette. And then of course the Mills and Boone was the Mills and Boone, we had to read them all. But today's generation find that too, not really their style. So I tell them, write. You just get down there and write. You may write like a little girl's essay in the beginning, but it slowly comes. It comes. Not everyone is just born and, a writer like, what's her name? DJ Rowling's and her. So that's the thing. Yeah, you've got to just want to do it.
Hi, Gia here. I just had one question about the narrative style. I was wondering why you decided, I read the book, it's lovely. I was wondering why you decided to take this plot and convey it with a linear narrative structure as opposed to, either using a cyclic or a non-linear narrative structure, because especially now that we've put it in the thriller genre, a lot of thriller books begin right bam smack in the middle of the action or when the protagonist is in the most trouble. Yet with this story, it's a very linear, timely fashion. So I was wondering, as a writer, how did you choose to take this approach?
As a writer, I prefer the linear style. I find it easier for me to write, but not all my books are linear. You can go back and forth to childhood, and in this one, yeah, and the Pilen book is not. And even this one, I'm glad you asked that question because this is non-linear, but linear is something I stuck to in this particular book because it had a pattern that it was, going forward with. And so that was important. The various police stations, the various things in court, the meeting of the lawyers, it kind of followed a linear pattern. It just depends on what kind of book you're writing. If you're writing a book which doesn't need to follow, the linear style, this one of mine just went anyway, wherever, went to childhood, went to adulthood. I started with childhood memories and then brought in adult passages of my parents with Parkinson's. So it was totally non-linear. Does that answer? Was there anything else you asked? No. Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that because writers do have to look at that. And Debbie, you could say about your movies. Do you do that?
Marianne, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
It's your turn in the chair today. Marianne, what has been your biggest learning over the writing of these 7 books as a writer and as a person?
I don't know, Debbie, like you, a filmmaker, it's like a kind of disease. I have to write. I have to write every day. And I think, it happens because, as journalists, we had to sit there and you go to that restaurant and then you pound out 300 words. Or you go to review a movie and you pound out so many. So it becomes part of your life, and that's why I think I write. And I don't know. It's a constant. It's something that has become like a meal for me. I mean, I've got to have my breakfast or I've got to have my lunch or whatever. I have to write. And I think it kind of like my David said to me just before this event on the phone from London, he said, Mom, you know, this book, I think is your best. I loved it. I said, don't lie, David. I don't think you've read the first. So he said, no, I must read. But I read the kiddie books, he says, to the kids. So at least that they read, yes. And Steve said it was nice. So Steve's my greatest critic, and I was very happy after that.
If the sons tell you, then it's got to be true. Thank you, Marianne.
Just a simple question. When you write, and you've written many books, do you write basically for yourself, or do you always have the reader or the audience in mind?
You know, that's a really good question, because I can't say I'm writing only for myself. All writers write for their readers. They write to, interest someone to pick up their book and read. That is really behind any author. They're happy when they get a response from their readers. So I'm not, yes, I feel comfortable about the fact that I've written the book, but no, I'm not writing only for myself. I'm not. I'm writing for all those readers out there who would like to read me. So I think that has come from my journalism background, because I would have people, when my stories came out in the Deccan Herald, say, oh, you are the one, that sort of thing. So I think we as journalists have that thing of wanting to write for your audience. I think it's that.
I have a question to follow, having heard you out, is that have you been in a situation where, or rather, I'm sure you have been, and I'm keen to know how you've resolved that, is that where, yeah, you write what your audience or readers would like to hear, and that's natural, but there might be an instance where your own thinking could be very different, very much at loggerheads with what the audience might want to hear. How do you resolve that? Have you been in such a situation?
Yes.
Or have you resolved it and say, to hell with this, in this scenario, I'm going to just voice my views, or something like that?
Again, my journalistic background comes up, right? We are supposed to be unbiased. We write supposedly objectively, okay, without biases coming out. So even if when I covered the various COP events in Copenhagen or in Spain or wherever I went to cover them, in Poland was one, you are told before you leave by your boss, you will write what India wants to hear and India's stand. So that's the way my life has been. I try to work objectively, because that's my work. And being in the environment, you have to try and work, sensibly, without, I don't want my story to be just deleted. I write my story, it's my opinion. I may just go over the top about it. And then I send it all the way, having typed it out in the media room in freezing Copenhagen, and the editor just throws it out. Who told you? I don't want your opinion. And I used to run the op-ed pages in the Deccan Herald. I ran that for several years. And that is where you really learn to be objective in whatever you do. You have to be objective. Yes, there is that bias which comes up, but it cannot be there in your writing. sadly. It will be just spiked. So I'm able to have a voice, as you're trying to say, my opinion, my voice, it does come out in my books. But in my stories, in the newspapers and stuff, you cannot do that unless you're doing an opinion piece. And even then it has to go with the newspapers, okay. Right? So that's really a valid point that you put. It's in your book, you can put in whatever you want and you can say whatever your feelings are. But even there, I think a little bit of caution always helps, right? Because who wants to read a rant? Nobody wants to read a rant. It becomes, forget her. We don't need her. We don't want to read her. I don't have that with any of my books. Yeah, I hope I answered that.
Anyone else would like to ask any question? I now call upon Adele to come and give a memento to Dr. Marianne de Nazareth. Can you come here, please? Can you come here? I now call upon Lizanne Arya to give a memento to Iona Miski. I now call upon Mr. Saldana, ex-president Catholic Club, to come and present a memento to Dr. Marianne.
I have to tell y'all that it was Francisco who allowed me to start Eyebrows. It was him.
There, so that's why he's going to present it to you.
Please, a round of applause. I just walked into their committee room and I said, Monsignor Jayanathan says, why can't you do something for the club? Why should we only all the shows and do something with books? And that's when I said, Francisco, can I? Of course, he said, he and Brian. Brian, where's Brian? Yay! Thank you.
Photo. Please stand there for a photograph. I now request Tessa to present a memento to Iona. This is from the Catholic Club. Eyebrows. I now ask Lunita Pius Dissa to come and give a token of appreciation to Adele for the great things that she does for us. Please come. 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 Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you've enjoyed this evening. We come to the close of another delightful book club event. On behalf of the Catholic Club, our President Ricky Patel, our Eyebrows Committee, Adele Brito, the KGA President, and the Karnataka Goers Association, we wish to thank you, Dr. Marianne de Nazareth, for introducing us to this fascinating book, Some Bark, Some Bite. I'm sure there'll be many more to follow. I would also like to thank Iona Mesquita, who gave us a peek into the book by asking all those relevant questions. Thank you, Ayana. Last but not the least, let me thank our wonderful audience tonight. A big clap for you. Please, anybody would like to buy a book, and Dr. Marianne will autograph it for you. And before that, if y'all, please, all of y'all come forward, we'll take a group photograph. Please come forward. Come, please come. Everybody, please, everyone. That's how we usually do. Could we have everyone out here for the photograph? Brian, please.